Todd Howard just did a huge interview with GQ where he discussed a potential shadow drop for The Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout development, and a lot more. And we haven't gotten much of anything from Bethesda lately on their upcoming titles, so anything we do get is huge, and I really think this interview gave a lot compared to their standards. So today I'll talk about the most interesting crumbs he left and what these could mean, including confirmed playtests for The Elder Scrolls 6, multiple Fallout games being developed, and Todd Howard all but confirming a shadow drop for The Elder Scrolls 6, and why insiders are saying that this shadow drop could cause conflict between Bethesda and Microsoft. So to open the article, Todd Howard wants you to know something straight off the bat. The Elder Scrolls 6 is still a long way off. I'm preaching patience. He tells me I don't want fans to feel anxious. Not a great start to the article. So it starts off with him asking Todd, what are you playing? I'm playing our own games. There are so many. In between that, I do play college football. It sounds ludicrous coming from me, but when someone doesn't make a sequel to a game you really want, you really miss it. I miss that game dearly. And Todd Howard just honestly so predictable at this point, and he really kind of shines some light on his philosophy when it comes to making games. He, despite what fans want, they in Bethesda and Todd Howard specifically, they love building up that anticipation. He talked about that a lot a few years ago when he did an interview with Matty Plays, how he likes to build up that anticipation with games. You know, he sees the wait in between games as a good thing. And then he gets straight to the most important thing. What are you working on right now? We have hundreds of people on Fallout right now with 76 and some other things we're doing. But The Elder Scrolls 6 is the everyday thing. This is really interesting because, first of all, there's no mention of Starfield, which is technically their next release. If we're not including the Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition, which is just a bundle, they're not really doing much with the game in terms of development. They already did their next gen update, tried fixing that. That's just pretty much a bundle of the games and a celebration of it. But their next big launch is the Starfield DLC. Can that game rebound? Because that's kind of the only reason you would continue with this game, because of its lack of success. Like, otherwise you would just abandon it. But I did think it was really interesting that he didn't mention Starfield once throughout this. And we haven't gotten a lot regarding that second Starfield DLC. And it's also very interesting that he says, and some other things we're doing. Now, we learned a few years ago, Fallout 3 is getting a remaster, and we know a lot about it now. Virtuos, the team who made Oblivion, is also doing a Fallout 3 remaster. So they'll likely be taking it and making an Unreal Engine 5 Fallout 3. And VGC pretty much just confirmed that, just to add on to it. One of the other things Howard is referring to, VGC understands, is a remaster of Fallout 3, similar to this year's Oblivion. But obviously it makes sense. The Elder Scrolls 6 is their next big full title release that's not a DLC. So it makes sense that that is their everyday thing now. I was just surprised he didn't talk about Starfield at all when it really needs some time, love, and care before this next DLC. It would be nice for them to end this Starfield project on a good note, in my opinion. And then again, he dives right back into how games can benefit from a delayed release. How does it feel making the Elder Scrolls game again? I do like to have a break between them where it isn't like a +1 sequel. I think it's also good for the audience to have a break. The Elder Scrolls has been too long, let's be clear. But we wanted to do something new with Starfield. We needed a creative reset. And again, the way he talks about Starfield is just kind of disappointing to me as someone who likes Starfield. We needed a creative reset. It's kind of like they're just using the Starfield as like a break from their mainline games and an experiment. And it just sucks to see there's not really any optimism about Starfield or any crumbs for that game left in this. But hey, I mean, it's been over 5 years since we've gotten anything for the Elder Scrolls before that fake trailer we got from them. And yeah, he says the Elder Scrolls has been too long, let's be clear. So I guess at least he's acknowledging it. And again, he gets back to that again. It took about 7 years to make Fallout 4. I'm guessing these long development times, heightened anticipation, and anxiety. I think there's an optimal point at times. We've been way past that. Now let's get to the reason you're probably here. The Elder Scrolls 6 playtest, release date. Let's get into that. So they are doing playtests for the Elder Scrolls 6, which is cool to hear. Do you still learn new things about making new games? Every project you're reminded of the big things. We did a big playtest yesterday for the Elder Scrolls 6, and you have to really look at the screen and say, what is this? What does this need? Where are we at? Great games are played, not made. The screen doesn't lie. And then he gets into it here. We did an auction to make a character in the Elder Scrolls 6. So at least they're doing some Elder Scrolls 6 related things. That's not just in studio behind closed doors, even though, I mean, it is a playtest behind closed doors, but still, at least the Elder Scrolls 6 is being played by someone. And this just goes right back to the disconnect that is seen by everyone between Bethesda and their core fans. Great games are played, not made. And I think this philosophy is what has hurt them, because Starfield sold well. It had a lot of hype pre-launch. So if he sees those numbers and the success that Starfield originally had at launch, he's going to assume that game was a success, and they're not going to really learn from their lessons. And we saw this with the DLC. The issues people had with the game were overlooked when they made that new DLC for Starfield, and the DLC ended up being far worse than the actual base game itself. This is part of the reason why the game sold well. They didn't really do too much soul searching because of that. So they didn't really make the adjustments that the fans wanted. Now let's get to the most important part out of all of this, the shadow drop that he pretty much confirms at the end. And then again, so when joking, talking about the Elder Scrolls playtest and the auction that they did for Make-A-Wish, where the kids got to create a character that they made for the Elder Scrolls 6, and then did they not like it? And then this is where it gets good. No. I just like to announce stuff and release it. My perfect vision, and I'm not going to say this is going to happen, is that it's going to be a while, and then one day the game will just appear. You shadow dropped Oblivion Remastered in April. Could you actually do that with the Elder Scrolls 6? You might say that was a test run. It worked out well. And it did. Oblivion was a huge success for Microsoft and Bethesda, the remaster. Even though they weren't the ones who really made it. It was Virtuos. They obviously helped. And that would be just such an interesting thing, because like the Elder Scrolls 6 will be the second biggest launch behind GTA 6. And it's just crazy to think GTA, I mean, we're just waiting for trailers. Like, we're celebrating third trailer potentially getting launched soon, like, which is completely different than the Elder Scrolls, which hasn't given us anything. And GTA 6 has been kind of similar. Like, they haven't given us a ton, but still, there's going to be a lot of marketing for the GTA 6 game that comes out next year, allegedly. We'll see. But I just think it would be insane for a game to the height of the Elder Scrolls 6 to shadow drop. I don't know how that would work. I like that. I love that idea. But others in the industry don't think it's going to work with Microsoft. Ryan McCaffrey with IGN says there's zero chance Microsoft allows for the shadow drop that Todd Howard seems to want for the Elder Scrolls 6. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Fall 2028 is the earliest that game might release. Patience, as Todd preaches, is required. So yeah, some people really believed that the Elder Scrolls 6 was coming out in 2026 potentially. And we honestly don't know when we keep hearing about potential shadow drops. We honestly have no idea. We knew Oblivion was coming, but we also know the Elder Scrolls 6 is coming. They were both leaked in that FTC document, just like the Fallout 3 Remastered. We know all of these games are being made, but we didn't know when this Oblivion shadow drop was going to happen. We were getting crumbs, and it seemed very unlikely up until like a few days before. Like, it still seemed like a long shot right beforehand. And if they did something like that for the Elder Scrolls 6, I think it would just melt the internet, especially if it's well after GTA 6, like 2028. That would be huge. Hopefully Starfield doesn't completely bottom out with an even worse DLC and the long wait between titles, with Fallout getting next to nothing. So hopefully that Fallout 3 Remaster is in between the Starfield DLC in 2026 and the Elder Scrolls in 2028 at the earliest. 2029 seems like most people think 2029 is going to be release date for that. So yeah, hopefully they can gain some good grace in between then. That would be nice to see before this long wait after Starfield and while we're waiting for Elder Scrolls 6. Because again, this Fallout 3 Remaster will be made by Virtuos Studios, the team who does the Cyberpunk DLCs. They do a bunch of things where they help other companies instead of making their own direct game. And I just don't like the Oblivion, for instance. That was their last game they remastered. I don't know if that gained Bethesda a ton of good grace. Like, I don't think people are more excited for the Starfield DLC or the Elder Scrolls 6 because of this Oblivion remake. Maybe a little bit, but not a ton. So I'm not sure this Fallout 3 remake is going to do that as well. Now, it's much needed. The Fallout fan base needs something. I'm not saying that's not the case, but I'm just saying that's such a long wait. We got to wait so long. And it's very frustrating when you hear patience is required. It's been over 7 years since we got the original trailer. That wasn't actually the game. Todd Howard paused to say, oh wow, that has been a while. The Elder Scrolls 6 is at least in production, with Bethesda confirming it had entered early development in August 2023, and early builds were available in March 2024. Phil Spencer has played it. He has talked about it a little bit. And obviously we got playtests done recently with it. So I do wonder what Microsoft thinks about this, because I do have a little bit of pushback with the way that Oblivion succeeded with this same exact shadow drop tactic. Now, obviously they're going to do a lot of marketing with the Elder Scrolls 6. And I think marketing is essential for the younger audiences because they haven't played the Elder Scrolls. The last Elder Scrolls came out in the early 2010s with Skyrim. Was it 2011, I think? So they haven't even played Skyrim or any of the Elder Scrolls. Maybe they played the Oblivion remake, but that's a remake from a game that from like 2006. Like they need to be introduced to this series, and hopefully Oblivion introduced some, but probably not a ton of people since it was a remake from a 2006 game. So maybe Jessica Starrier is pretty big in Bethesda stuff. This is a rare occasion where I might disagree with you, Ryan. I think Fallout 27 is strongly possible. I agree with that. I think 2027 makes sense with where we're at. I truly think they are going to self-drop this. I think Oblivion worked. I think it would melt the internet if they did a true shadow drop for the Elder Scrolls 6, truly. Because I think marketing their games with their current public perception of Bethesda is a lot of people hate it, but a lot of people are going to buy and try this game, just like Oblivion, just like Starfield. It's sold well. And I think marketing can hurt games, truly. I think if you take away that window, people are going to try the Elder Scrolls 6. Again, we're slowly leaving the age of pre-orders. People are still going to pre-order the games. I still pre-order games. I like to just get it over with, especially if it's a game I know I'm going to like. But we are starting to leave the age of pre-orders because there's really no point. Let's see what a game has to offer. So I don't think everyone has to buy a game within that first week these days for it to be a massive success. We've seen games a few weeks after their initial launch really take off. So the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be immensely popular, and it can actually continue to grow afterwards if it's received well. If this is truly an amazing, immersive open world, it's going to be viral. And in doing this, you are completely betting on yourself and the game. So it is an interesting approach. So yeah, that's it. We did get a decent bit amount of information here. Again, with Fallout, I do think it's interesting that he says we're making multiple titles. We know about Fallout 5 will be made by Bethesda. They are working on Fallout 5. I don't know how much they're truly able to put into it with Starfield and Elder Scrolls, but it is being worked on. 76 is still getting love, and Fallout 3 Remastered is being made by Virtuos. As far as New Vegas, a New Vegas remaster or a sequel, I will make a separate video talking about that this week because we did get some new information about Obsidian Studios and what they're doing next, because they are the ones who did make that game originally and they just dropped the Outer Worlds 2, so their schedule's free. I'll be making a video on that this week, so if that sort of thing interests you, check out the channel. Thank you if you did make it this far. I just kind of rambled on about Todd Howard and Bethesda games, and I will see you guys in the next. Peace.